Okay, so have you ever looked at a really amazing piece of jewelry and wondered how it was made?
It's pretty amazing how they do it right.
It is. And today we're going to go behind the sparkle to learn about the people who make it all happen. Jewelry mounters.
Yeah, the unsung heroes of the jewelry world.
Totally.
Huh.
And to guide us on this deep dive, we have RoleCatcher's Career Guide for Jewelry Mounters.
It's a really interesting guide. It goes into a lot of detail.
That's what we like. So to get us started, when we say jewelry mounter, what are we actually talking about?
Well, they're the ones who actually build the piece of jewelry. They design and craft the metal framework for any piece of jewelry you can think of, rings, necklaces, earrings, you name it. And then they set the gemstones into that framework.
Wow, so it's really like they're building these tiny little intricate sculptures?
Yeah, you could think of it that way, and it's not easy. It takes a
Oh,
lot of skill and a very steady hand.
I bet. So we're talking about a job that takes both technical skills and artistry. What's the typical work environment like for a jewelry mounter?
Well, you might picture like a dimly lit workshop with magnifying glasses and stuff.
Right, like something really old school.
And yeah, sometimes it is like that. But the guide actually talks about how there's a lot of variety in this field. Some jewelry mounters work in busy jewelry stores or quiet design studios or even out of their own homes.
Oh, wow. So there's a lot more variety than you might think.
Hmm.
That's pretty cool. I'm curious, though. With all the technology we have these days, how has that changed the work of a jewelry mounter?
That's a good question. Technology has definitely had a big impact on this field. These days, a lot of jewelry mounters are using computer-aided design or CAD software to create those really intricate designs.
Wow, I had no idea they were using that kind of technology.
Yeah, and get this. Some jewelry mounters are even starting to use 3D printing.
3D printing for jewelry. Hold on. How does that even work?
It's pretty wild. They can actually 3D print different jewelry components, which just opens up so many new possibilities for design that weren't possible before.
That is wild. It's incredible to see how technology is changing every field, even something as old as jewelry making. So with all that in mind, what does the RoleCatcher guide say about the pros and cons of being a jewelry mounter?
Well, one of the biggest pros is the creativity involved. You're basically bringing these artistic visions to life and working with your hands. And job security is another big one. People will probably always want beautiful jewelry, right?
Makes sense. That's always a good thing to have.
It is. And then, of course, there's just the wow factor of working with all these precious metals and gemstones all the time.
Yeah, that sounds like it would never get old. But what about the flip side? What are some of the challenges that come with this job?
Well, it can be physically demanding. It takes a lot of focus, and you're often working with your hands in the same position for a long time. So there's potential for repetitive strain injuries.
That's a good point. It's definitely something to be aware of.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And just like any field where you need a high level of skill and artistry, it's a competitive field. Not to mention that the guide also says jewelry mounters often work long hours, especially when they're up against a deadline.
So it takes real passion and dedication to do this kind of work.
It really does.
It's interesting, though, how we're seeing this same kind of balance between artistry, technical skills, and the realities of the market across so many different fields now.
It's true. It's not enough to be really good at just one thing anymore. You have to be adaptable and constantly learning to keep up with the way things are changing, which is
Wow.
something that this deep dive is really highlighting.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about what it means to be a jewelry mounter, and we've gone over some of the pros and cons. But now I want to know, how do you actually become one? Is it one of those things where you need years and years of formal training?
It can be, but not always. The guide actually lays out a really interesting path to mastery. It can be.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always have to be about going to some fancy school. The guide actually lays out this really cool path to becoming a master jewelry mounter.
Oh, really? It's like a journeyman's path or something.
Exactly. It usually starts with an apprenticeship where you basically learn everything from scratch. Like you learn how to work with metal, how to do soldering and polishing, even those tiny little engravings you see on some rings.
Oh, wow. So you're really getting hands-on experience, even if you already have some artistic talent.
Yeah, for sure. You got to learn the basics first. And as you get better and better, you move up the ladder. You become a junior jewelry mounter and then a senior jewelry mounter. And each step comes with more responsibility.
So does that mean you start taking on more complicated designs or even start managing a team at some point?
You got it. And eventually, you might even become the one who's leading a team of jewelry mounters, or you could be designing those one-of-a-kind pieces that cost a fortune. Or you might even end up being the one who's teaching new apprentices, passing down all the stuff you've learned over the years.
That's a really cool career path to see laid out like that. Kind of reminds me of those old school guilds where you work your way up to becoming a master craftsperson.
It's totally like that. And there's a reason why that kind of system has been around for so long. It's about developing real skill and respect for the materials and the techniques. But here's the thing that I find really interesting. The guide actually emphasizes how important it is to never stop learning, even if you're already like a super experienced jewelry mounter.
Wait, really? Even if you're already at the top of your game, you still have to keep learning new stuff?
Yeah, because the world of jewelry is always changing. New techniques pop up, new materials are being discovered all the time. And on top of all that, there's that whole technology thing we were talking about earlier. If you're a jewelry mounter and you want to stay ahead of the curve, you've got to be ready to adapt and always be on the lookout for new knowledge.
That's amazing. Even in a field that seems so rooted in tradition, there's still that constant push to learn and grow. That's such a good lesson for anyone, no matter what they do.
I totally agree. And that actually brings us to some of the other resources that RoleCatcher offers, those interview guides and job searching tools we mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah. You're right. I almost forgot about those. I have to admit, when I first saw interview prep for jewelry mounters, it was kind of like, well, that's pretty specific. But then I actually took a closer look and
what'd you think?
okay, it's actually really smart. What they've done is, instead of just giving you some generic advice, they actually break things down specifically for people in this field. They even give you sample questions and tips on how to deal with those tricky questions that interviewers love to throw at you.
Yeah, those curveball questions can be tough.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
So for our listeners who are probably thinking, well, this is all interesting, but I'm not about to become a jewelry mounter anytime soon.
Yeah.
How is all of this relevant to them?
That's a great question. Let's take those interview questions as an example. The guide talks about things like how to deal with a difficult customer or how to explain really technical stuff to someone who doesn't know anything about it.
Those are good skills for anyone to have.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just about interview questions either.
Yeah.
Right? RoleCatcher also has those job searching tools.
Totally. They're actually really cool. You upload your CV and RoleCatcher goes through and pulls out all the skills you've used in different jobs. It doesn't just look at your job titles, though.
Oh, interesting. So it's doing more than just like a keyword search.
Way more. It's looking for those transferable skills that you might not even realize you have. Like, let's say you have experience in something like graphic design or even model building. Stuff that takes a lot of precision and an eye for detail.
Which a jewelry mounter also needs.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher can actually make those connections for you. It can show you how the skills you already have could be applied to a totally different field.
Wow, that's actually really cool. So you might think, I'm not qualified for that kind of job. But then RoleCatcher might be able to show you that you actually have a lot of relevant experience.
It's true. It can really open your eyes to new possibilities.
It really sounds like a secret weapon for your job search. This whole deep dive has been full of surprises. We started out talking about the world of jewelry mounters, and now we're having this really interesting conversation about the job market in general.
It's amazing how these deep dives always seem to uncover these bigger ideas.
Right. It's like we're seeing how important it is to be adaptable and to keep learning new things no matter what you do for a living.
Totally. And to remember that there are these amazing tools out there like RoleCatcher that can help you make sense of it all and find the right path for you.
So true. It's all about using those tools to your advantage. Just like a jewelry mounter uses their tools to bring out the beauty of a gemstone.
Wow, I love that analogy.
Me too. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of jewelry mounters, what's the one big takeaway you hope our listeners are left with today?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing is just to remember that you're not alone in all of this. There are resources out there, tools and information that can help you figure out what you want to do and how to get there.
I agree. And it's never too late to learn something new or to try a different path. Who knows? You might even surprise yourself with what you're capable of.
That's the beauty of it all, right?
Absolutely. So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into all the amazing things the world has to offer.